The city streets were alive with the hum of New Year's Eve, a symphony of laughter, fireworks crackling in the distance, and the faint murmur of resolutions whispered into the night air. Anna trudged home through the chaos, clutching a worn bag of groceries that symbolized her current reality. Each step resonated with the weight of her life, a relentless cycle of bills, endless shifts, and an ever-present uncertainty about her finances. The gleam of her hopes for a brighter future felt dim against the harsh light of her struggles. Anna's apartment was modest, a tiny space she had fought to keep amidst mounting debts. Inside, her younger brother Lucas sat at the edge of their shared sofa, fidgeting with an old game controller. He looked up as Anna entered, a smile attempting to mask his concern. At only 13, Lucas understood more about hardship than most his age. Anna had taken on the dual role of sister and mother after their parents' untimely passing, a loss that had shattered their world, but forged an unbreakable bond between the two. As midnight approached, Anna sat at their tiny dining table, scrolling through her phone. The screen lit up with messages from acquaintances and a few distant relatives, hollow greetings that felt more like formalities. She sighed, composing a heartfelt message that reflected her earnest wish for the coming year. It wasn't grandiose, just honest. A simple wish for peace, stability, and the courage to face the unknown. Unbeknownst to her, a slip of the finger added an unfamiliar number to the group of recipients. The message was sent, scattering like sparks in the wind. Miles away, Miguel leaned back in a leather armchair in his opulent penthouse, a glass of wine untouched on the table beside him. The room was cold despite its luxury, an icy reflection of the man himself. Miguel's life was a gilded cage, adorned with success and wealth but devoid of meaning. The years had hardened him, each deal, betrayal and conquest in the world of finance carving away at his ability to trust, to feel. Tonight, the loneliness of his choices weighed heavier than usual. His phone buzzed, interrupting the silence. He glanced at the screen, expecting another perfunctory holiday greeting from an associate. Instead, the words that appeared were startling in their simplicity. To all of you who made it through this year, even if just barely, I wish you strength. To those who fell, I wish you peace. And to those still searching, may you find what you're looking for. Happy New Year. Miguel read the message again, his brow furrowing. He didn't recognize the number, but the words resonated in a way he hadn't felt in years. Against his better judgment, he typed a reply. Thank you. Who is this? The sound of the message sent startled Anna. She hadn't expected any replies, especially from a number she didn't recognize. Confused, she opened the notification and read the message. Her brows knitted in frustration. She must have sent her heartfelt wish to a stranger. Embarrassed, she started to type an apology but stopped. Something about the response intrigued her, the curt yet curious tone standing out against the usual platitudes she received. It seems I sent this by mistake, she replied. Sorry about that. The response came quickly. No need to apologize. Your message was unexpected, but appreciated. Anna hesitated, her fingers hovering over the screen. Who was this person, and why did his words feel strangely sincere? Before she could decide whether to reply, Lucas called from the other room, breaking the moment. As the clock struck midnight, fireworks erupted outside, lighting up the sky in bursts of color. Anna leaned against the window, watching the display with a mix of hope and doubt. She couldn't shake the odd sense that the message, though accidental, had started something beyond her comprehension. A flicker of light in the darkness. The early days of January crept in with the same cold, grey monotony that Anna had grown accustomed to. The distant hum of the city outside her window was a reminder of the relentless pace of a world she felt was always one step ahead. Yet something lingered in her mind, a small but persistent thought about the stranger who had responded to her accidental message. His reply had been brief, almost dismissive, yet there was something oddly human about it. Anna couldn't shake the feeling that her words had stirred something in him. Her days were consumed by a routine of work and care. Between her job as a cashier at a bustling grocery store and helping Lucas with his schoolwork, there was little time for distraction. Yet in the quiet moments between tasks, her gaze would drift to her phone, wondering if the stranger would reach out again. But days passed in silence. On the other side of the city, Miguel sat in his penthouse office, eyes fixed on the sprawling skyline that stretched beyond his floor-to-ceiling windows. The city below was a glittering web of opportunity, but to him, it felt hollow. His phone rested on the desk, the message still visible on the screen. He had reread it more times than he cared to admit. The words were simple, yet they carried a weight he couldn't ignore. They reminded him of a time when his ambitions weren't solely driven by money, when hope and humanity hadn't been sacrificed for success. Miguel was a man of meticulous control, but this message, with its raw sincerity, had pierced through his carefully constructed armor. Against his better judgment, he saved the number. There was no logical reason to, but something about it felt right. Meanwhile, Anna's financial situation grew increasingly precarious. Bills piled up on the small table by the door, their stark lettering a cruel reminder of her reality. She'd managed to stretch every penny she earned, but Lucas's school expenses and the rising cost of living were unyielding. Still, she refused to let her brother see the weight she carried. For him, she would always wear a smile. One evening, after a particularly grueling shift, Anna slumped onto the sofa. Lucas had already gone to bed, and the apartment was silent except for the faint ticking of the clock. On a whim, she opened her messages and stared at the brief exchange with the stranger. Her finger hovered over the keyboard. Before she could talk herself out of it, she typed, "I hope the new year is treating you well." The response came almost instantly. "It's been quiet. And you?" Anna smiled faintly, the simple act of connection a balm to her weary soul. "Quiet isn't always bad," she replied. "Sometimes it's what we need to think about what's next." Miguel leaned back in his chair, considering her words. His world was anything but quiet, a constant onslaught of meetings, deals, and the relentless pursuit of profit. Yet, amidst the chaos, he felt a gnawing emptiness. For years, his success in finance had defined him, but now it felt like a gilded cage. Her message was a reminder of something he had long forgotten, the value of introspection. "What's next for you?" he typed, genuinely curious. Anna hesitated. What was next? It was a question she avoided asking herself. Her life had been in survival mode for so long that the concept of next seemed almost indulgent. "Honestly, I don't know, but I guess I just keep moving forward." Her response struck a chord with Miguel. It wasn't the ambitious declaration he was used to hearing from his peers, but something about its simplicity was profoundly real. In her words, he found a glimpse of the humanity he had spent years shutting out. Their conversation carried on sporadically over the next week. Anna found herself looking forward to the brief moments of respite their exchanges provided, while Miguel was surprised by how much he enjoyed the candidness of their talks. He didn't feel the need to impress her, and she didn't seem to expect anything from him. They were two people, worlds apart, connected by an accidental message and a shared desire for something more. One evening, as they talked about New Year's resolutions, Miguel asked, "If you could change one thing about your life right now, what would it be?" Anna paused, the weight of the question pressing down on her. She glanced at the stack of bills on the table. "Financial stability," she admitted. "Not having to worry about how I'll make it to the end of the month, but more than that, I'd want to give Lucas a chance at something better." Miguel stared at her message, his chest tightening. He had spent his life mastering the world of money, yet here was someone for whom the basics of financial security were an unattainable dream. For the first time in years, he felt something stir within him, a desire to do something meaningful, not for profit, but for the sake of another person. He didn't respond right away, his mind racing with thoughts he couldn't yet articulate, and Anna, sensing his hesitation, didn't press further. But in that moment, a seed was planted, and their connection grew deeper in ways neither of them fully understood. Rain pattered softly against the window of Anna's apartment as she stared at the glowing screen of her phone, lost in thought. Miguel's last message had been brief, a simple acknowledgement of her desire for financial stability. But it had lingered in her mind like a question left unanswered. There was something enigmatic about him, a mix of detachment and curiosity that kept her intrigued. For a stranger who seemed so distant, he had a way of making her feel heard. The week had been relentless for Anna. The grocery store was understaffed, leaving her to cover extra shifts. Her body ached from standing on her feet for hours, and the mental toll of constantly juggling bills and priorities weighed heavily. Still, she forced herself to smile as she folded Lucas's laundry and prepared his lunch for school. Her love for him was the one constant in a world that seemed determined to test her resilience. Meanwhile, across the city, Miguel sat in his sleek office overlooking the skyline, his mind far from the financial empire he had built. The documents on his desk, a lucrative investment proposal, remained untouched. His thoughts drifted to Anna's words, her quiet determination, her unyielding strength despite her circumstances. It was a stark contrast to the hollow ambitions that defined his world, where relationships were transactional and money was the only measure of success. The conversation between them resumed late one evening, almost by chance. Anna, exhausted after another long shift, sent a message on a whim. "Do you ever feel like your life isn't really yours? Like you're just existing?" Miguel stared at the message, his chest tightening. Her words articulated a feeling he hadn't dared to confront. "All the time," he replied, "but I've learned to bury it under distractions." Anna hesitated before responding. "What kind of distractions?" Miguel's lips twitched into a faint smile. He admired her candor, the way she asked questions without pretense. "Work, mostly. Deals, numbers, money. But it doesn't really fill the void." Anna's fingers hovered over the keyboard. She wanted to ask more, to peel back the layers of this enigmatic stranger, but she also felt a pang of vulnerability. "Sometimes I think if I just had more money, everything would be easier, but I wonder if it would actually make me happy." The irony of her words struck Miguel like a blow. He had spent his life chasing wealth, amassing a fortune that most could only dream of. Yet here he was, still searching for fulfillment. "Money solves problems," he wrote after a long pause, "but it doesn't solve everything." Their exchange drifted into silence, but the connection between them deepened. Miguel found himself scrolling back through their messages, drawn to Anna's sincerity. For the first time in years, he felt a pull towards something beyond his carefully curated world of finance and power. Days later, Miguel made a decision that surprised even himself. He contacted an old associate who ran a high-profile charity event. It was the type of gathering he usually avoided, lavish displays of wealth under the guise of altruism. But this time, he had a purpose. He secured a position as a temporary assistant for the event, ensuring anonymity. He wanted Anna to attend, not as a guest, but as part of the team. His reasoning was complicated, even to him. He told himself it was curiosity, but deep down, it was something more. Anna received the offer through an email from the event coordinator. The compensation was generous for a single evening's work, enough to cover a month's rent. Skeptical but intrigued, she accepted. She didn't connect it to Miguel, who remained a mystery despite their growing rapport. On the night of the event, Anna arrived at the venue, an opulent ballroom adorned with glittering chandeliers and floral arrangements that exuded wealth. She felt out of place in her simple black dress, a stark contrast to the designer-clad guests who sipped champagne and exchanged pleasantries. Still, she focused on her role, coordinating schedules and ensuring the evening ran smoothly. From a distance, Miguel watched her with quiet admiration. He had dressed down, blending in among the event staff. Seeing Anna navigate the room with poise and determination, he was struck by how effortlessly she commanded respect without even realizing it. She didn't need wealth or power to make an impact. Her authenticity was enough. Anna, meanwhile, began to notice a peculiar pattern. A man, seemingly unremarkable among the staff, appeared to be watching her. It wasn't overt or unsettling, but there was an intensity to his gaze that made her uneasy. She shook off the thought, focusing instead on the task at hand. The night progressed, and Anna found herself drawn into conversations with attendees, her natural warmth and curiosity shining through. By the end of the evening, she had garnered praise from several high-profile guests who marveled at her composure and grace. She was unaware that one of those compliments had come directly from Miguel, disguised as a casual remark to the event coordinator. As the night drew to a close, Anna stepped outside for a moment of solitude. The crisp air was a welcome reprieve from the chaos inside. She gazed at the city lights, lost in thought. Behind her, Miguel lingered in the shadows, his mind racing with questions. For years, his decisions had been driven by logic and profit, but now he was confronting something entirely new, a desire to connect, to understand, to help. The first days of February brought a biting cold to the city, and with it a whirlwind of emotions Anna couldn't quite place. The charity event had left her with a peculiar mix of gratitude and unease. The generous compensation had allowed her to pay down several overdue bills, but something about the evening lingered in her mind. The subtle praise she'd received from strangers, the grandeur of the setting, it all felt strangely significant, as though it were a puzzle she hadn't yet solved. And then there was the man. His presence was fleeting, his face unremarkable, yet something about him had stuck in her memory. She brushed the thought aside, chalking it up to exhaustion, and resumed her daily routine. Still, the faint tug of mystery remained, buried beneath the hum of her responsibilities. Miguel, meanwhile, was wrestling with his own thoughts. For days, he replayed the evening in his mind, analyzing every detail. Anna's humility, her strength. It had struck a chord in him that he hadn't felt in years. He sat in his office late one evening, staring at his reflection in the darkened window. The skyline stretched before him, an empire he had built, yet it felt hollow. The wealth and power he once revered now seemed trivial compared to the authenticity he had witnessed in Anna. For the first time, Miguel allowed himself to consider what it would mean to step out of the shadows and reveal his true identity. But fear held him back. Fear of being misunderstood, of overstepping boundaries, of disrupting the delicate balance they had unknowingly built. Instead, he resolved to stay at a distance, watching and supporting from afar. Anna's life continued, though it was no longer entirely the same. The financial reprieve had given her a moment of relief, but it hadn't erased the weight of her struggles. One evening, as she reviewed a pile of overdue utility bills, her phone buzzed with a message. "How have things been?" Miguel's question was simple, yet it carried an unspoken depth. Anna hesitated before responding. "Better, I guess." That job really helped, still figuring things out, though. Miguel smiled faintly at her honesty. Figuring things out is half the battle. he replied. "What's next for you?" Anna let out a soft laugh, though no one was around to hear it. "You always ask me that, I don't know. Surviving? Taking care of Lucas? That's about all I can think of right now." Miguel's chest tightened at her words. He admired her resolve, but it pained him to see how her potential was stifled by circumstances beyond her control. For a man who had mastered the art of turning ideas into profit, it was frustrating to see someone so capable held back by the constraints of survival. "You're stronger than you realize," he typed after a pause. "More capable than most people I know." Anna read the message twice, her brows furrowing. His words were kind, but they felt out of place, too personal for a stranger. "You don't really know me," she replied, her tone cautious. Miguel stared at the screen, her response a reminder of the fragile line he was walking. "Maybe not," he admitted, "but sometimes it's easier to see someone's strength from the outside." Anna didn't know how to respond, so she didn't. The conversation ended there, leaving both of them lost in thought. A week later, Anna received another email, this time offering her a longer-term position assisting with community outreach for the same charity. The pay was generous, far beyond what she was earning at the grocery store. Though the opportunity seemed almost too good to be true, she couldn't afford to turn it down. She accepted the offer, unaware that Miguel had orchestrated the entire arrangement. Her first day in the role brought her back to the same opulent venue, this time as part of the planning team. As she familiarized herself with the project, she began to notice peculiarities. Certain tasks seemed tailored to her strengths, and several high-ranking members of the organization treated her with a respect that felt disproportionate to her position. One evening, as she organized a stack of documents, she overheard a conversation in the hallway. Two coordinators were discussing a recent donation, a substantial sum from a private benefactor who had insisted on remaining anonymous. Anna's curiosity was piqued, but she dismissed the thought, focusing instead on her work. Miguel, on the other hand, was finding it increasingly difficult to maintain his anonymity. Watching Anna navigate her new role with confidence and grace filled him with a sense of pride he hadn't expected. Yet, it also deepened the conflict within him. He wanted to be closer to her, to share the truth of his involvement, but the fear of disrupting her life held him back. As the weeks went on, Anna began to notice other oddities. The mysterious benefactor, the tailored opportunities, the subtle sense that she was being watched, it all pointed to something she couldn't quite grasp. And then there was the man from the event. She hadn't seen him since that night, but his presence lingered in her mind, a shadow she couldn't shake. The tension built slowly, like a storm gathering on the horizon. Each interaction, each discovery added another piece to the puzzle. And though Anna didn't yet have all the answers, she knew one thing for certain. Her life was no longer the same, and the forces shaping it were far beyond her understanding. The morning sun filtered through the curtains of Anna's apartment, casting a soft glow over the modest living room where Lucas was engrossed in his homework. Anna sipped her coffee slowly, her mind elsewhere. The weeks since she had started working with the charity had been transformative in ways she hadn't expected. She was finally able to catch her breath financially, though the persistent weight of uncertainty remained. But it wasn't just the job that occupied her thoughts. It was the growing sense that something or someone was quietly steering her life in a direction she didn't fully understand. That evening, Anna attended a meeting at the charity's headquarters, a sleek building that felt out of place against the backdrop of her everyday life. As the team reviewed the progress of their latest initiative, Anna found herself wondering about the mysterious benefactor whose generosity had made so many of these projects possible. The donations were massive, almost incomprehensible, yet the benefactor's identity remained hidden. Anna felt a mix of gratitude and curiosity. her instincts telling her that there was more to the story. Miguel sat in a corner of the room, observing the meeting from a distance. He had taken great care to maintain his anonymity, blending in as one of the many faces behind the scenes. Yet every time Anna spoke, he felt a surge of pride. Her insights were sharp, her passion undeniable. He saw in her the potential for something far greater than her current role, but he also knew that revealing himself could shatter the delicate trust they had built. Later that night, Anna walked home under the glow of streetlights, her thoughts swirling. She had begun to notice things, small, almost imperceptible details that hinted at a larger truth. The way certain opportunities seemed to align perfectly with her skills. The quiet respect she garnered from senior members of the team. And then there was the man from the event, his shadowy presence still lingering in her mind. Who was he, and why did she feel as though he was somehow connected to all of this? At the same time, Miguel wrestled with his growing inner conflict. For years, he had lived by the rules of finance, calculated risks, measured returns, strategic investments. Yet, with Anna, those rules no longer seemed to apply. He found himself drawn to her honesty, her resilience, her ability to find joy in the smallest of victories. But the closer he got, the more he risked losing everything he had worked so hard to build, including the fragile connection they shared. The tension reached a boiling point when Anna stumbled upon something unexpected. While organizing a stack of documents at the charity's office, she came across an old ledger. It was nothing out of the ordinary at first glance, just a record of donations and expenditures. But as she flipped through the pages, one name caught her eye: Miguel Aragon. The amount listed next to it was staggering, enough to fund an entire year of the charity's operations. Her heart raced as she tried to piece together what it meant. Could this be the same Miguel she had been exchanging messages with? The man whose words had comforted her during sleepless nights and whose presence she had felt even from a distance. The idea seemed absurd, yet the evidence was staring her in the face. Anna spent the rest of the evening in a haze, her mind replaying every conversation, every interaction. The pieces of the puzzle began to align, forming a picture she wasn't sure she was ready to see. If Miguel was the benefactor, what did that mean for their connection? Had he been helping her out of kindness, or was there something more? The next day, Miguel received a message that made his heart stop. "Who are you, really?" Anna had written. It was a simple question, but it carried the weight of everything unsaid between them. Miguel stared at the screen, his mind racing. He knew this moment would come, but he wasn't prepared for it. He typed and deleted his response several times, each version feeling inadequate. Finally, he wrote, "I think it's time we talked." Anna felt a chill run down her spine as she read his reply. The words were vague, but the tone was serious. Her instincts told her that whatever came next would change everything. As the evening approached, Anna sat by the window of her apartment, watching the city lights flicker in the distance. She couldn't shake the feeling that her life was on the brink of something profound. She had spent so long focusing on survival, on making ends meet, that she hadn't allowed herself to dream of anything more. But now, the world was opening up in ways she hadn't anticipated, and she wasn't sure if she was ready to face it. Miguel, too, felt the weight of what was to come. He had spent years building walls to protect himself, but Anna had found a way through them. He wasn't sure if she would accept him for who he truly was, but he knew he couldn't keep hiding. The stage was set, the players in place, and as the city settled into the quiet hum of night, both Anna and Miguel braced themselves for the moment that would bring their worlds together, or tear them apart. The air was heavy with anticipation as Anna stood in front of the cafe Miguel had chosen for their meeting. She felt a strange mix of curiosity and trepidation. Her mind raced with questions, each one pulling her in a different direction. Who was Miguel really? Why had he kept so much hidden? And why did she feel like her life had been quietly orbiting around his, even without her knowing? Miguel arrived early, sitting at a corner table with a clear view of the entrance. His normally composed demeanor was overshadowed by unease. He wasn't used to being vulnerable. His life in finance had conditioned him to control every variable, every outcome. But Anna was an equation he couldn't solve, and the uncertainty both terrified and exhilarated him. When Anna entered, her presence seemed to shift the air around her. Miguel rose to greet her, but she offered only a tentative nod before sitting across from him. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The noise of the cafe buzzed around them, a stark contrast to the silence that stretched between their gazes. Finally, Anna broke the tension. "So, are you going to tell me the truth?" Miguel hesitated, his fingers tracing the rim of his coffee cup. "I owe you that much," he said, his voice low but steady. "But before I do, I need you to know that nothing I've done was meant to deceive you. I just wasn't sure how to explain." Anna leaned back, her expression guarded. "Start with who you are." Miguel took a deep breath. "I'm Miguel Aragon. I run a private equity firm. My life has been about money, building it, managing it, controlling it, but it's also left me disconnected, empty even." Anna's brow furrowed as she absorbed his words. "So the charity, the job, that was you?" "Yes," Miguel admitted, meeting her eyes. "When I got your message, it was like a wake-up call. Your words, how you spoke about resilience, about hope. It reminded me of something I'd lost. I wanted to help you, but I didn't know how to do it without complicating things." Anna's heart raced as she processed the revelation. On one hand, she felt a sense of betrayal. Her life had been quietly influenced by someone she barely knew. On the other hand, she couldn't ignore the sincerity in Miguel's voice or the way his actions had genuinely improved her circumstances. "You should have told me," she said finally, her voice tinged with frustration. "You had no right to make decisions about my life without my knowledge." "I know," Miguel said, his tone earnest. "I didn't handle it the right way. I didn't want to overwhelm you. I thought I could stay in the background, but the more I got to know you, the harder that became." Anna's emotions were a whirlwind: anger, gratitude, confusion, all colliding at once. She wanted to walk away, to create distance from the tangled web Miguel had woven around her life, but part of her also wanted to stay, to understand the man behind the wealth and secrets. "Why me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Miguel hesitated, searching for the right words. "Because you're real," he said finally. "In my world, everything is about appearances, about transactions, but you're honest. You're resilient. You reminded me of what it means to be human." Anna looked down at her hands, her thoughts swirling. She had spent so much of her life fighting to survive, to protect Lucas, that she had forgotten what it felt like to be seen, not as a responsibility, but as a person. And here was Miguel, a man who seemingly had everything, admitting that he had been drawn to her for reasons even he couldn't fully explain. "I don't know what to do with this," she admitted, her voice trembling. "It's a lot to process." Miguel nodded, his expression softening. "Take your time. I'm not asking for anything. I just needed you to know the truth." Their conversation stretched into the evening, the initial tension giving way to something more reflective. Miguel shared glimpses of his life, the pressure of his success, the betrayals that had hardened him, the emptiness he had tried to fill with wealth. Anna, in turn, spoke about her struggles, her fears, and her unwavering determination to give Lucas a better life. By the time they parted, Anna felt a strange sense of clarity. Miguel's actions had been flawed, even misguided, but his intentions had been rooted in something genuine. She didn't know what their connection would become, but for the first time in years, she felt like she had the space to consider the possibilities. Miguel watched her disappear into the night, a quiet resolve settling over him. He had taken a risk in revealing the truth, but it had been worth it. For the first time in years, he felt like he was stepping out of the shadows, not just for Anna, but for himself. As the city lights flickered around them, their lives remained intertwined, their paths uncertain. And though neither of them knew what lay ahead, they both felt the faint stirrings of something new, something real. The days following their conversation left Anna in a state of emotional limbo. Miguel's revelations had thrown her life into sharp relief, exposing cracks she hadn't even known existed. Her nights were restless, her thoughts circling back to his words, his actions, and the undeniable sincerity in his eyes. She couldn't deny the truth. Miguel's presence had profoundly altered the trajectory of her life. But whether that was for better or worse remained uncertain. At the charity office, Anna threw herself into her work, hoping the busyness would drown out her inner turmoil. The outreach programs were in full swing, and her role demanded precision and coordination. Yet amidst the chaos, Anna noticed subtle shifts. Conversations seemed to pause when she entered a room, and certain members of the team treated her with an unusual deference. The air of mystery surrounding her position grew heavier, feeding her unease. One afternoon, as she sorted through a stack of donor correspondence, Anna stumbled upon a letter bearing Miguel's name. The contents were brief, a simple acknowledgement of his most recent contribution, but the tone struck her as strangely personal. The charity director had scrawled a handwritten note at the bottom. "Your vision for this initiative is inspiring. We're grateful for your continued involvement." Anna's chest tightened. It was one thing to suspect Miguel's influence. It was another to see it laid bare in ink. She folded the letter carefully and slipped it back into the pile, her mind racing. What was his vision, and why did it feel like she was part of it without her consent? Meanwhile, Miguel grappled with his own internal battles. Since their meeting, he had given Anna space, resisting the urge to reach out. Yet every fiber of his being wanted to check on her, to explain himself further, to ensure she understood the depth of his intentions. But he knew that pushing too hard would risk undoing the fragile trust they had begun to build. Instead, Miguel channeled his energy into the charity's projects. He increased his involvement, attending planning sessions, and quietly advocating for initiatives that aligned with Anna's strengths. It was his way of staying close without crossing boundaries. But even as he worked from the shadows, he couldn't shake the feeling that his efforts might not be enough. The tension between them came to a head during a surprise visit from one of the charity's major sponsors. Anna had been tasked with leading a presentation about their newest program, a community mentorship initiative. She had prepared meticulously, her natural charisma shining as she outlined the project's goals and impact. The room was captivated, and Anna felt a surge of pride as the sponsors nodded in approval. As the meeting concluded, Anna noticed Miguel lingering near the doorway. He had been present for the entire presentation, his expression unreadable. Their eyes met briefly, and in that fleeting moment, Anna felt a spark of something she couldn't quite name, pride perhaps, or recognition. Whatever it was, it unsettled her. After the meeting, Anna confronted him in the hallway. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her tone a mix of curiosity and frustration. Miguel hesitated, then gestured toward the conference room. "I wanted to see your work. You were brilliant, by the way." Anna crossed her arms, her gaze unwavering. "You don't have to hover over me. I can handle this on my own." "I know you can," Miguel said softly, "but I'm not hovering. I'm just invested." The word hung between them, heavy with implication. Anna didn't know whether to be flattered or angry. "Why does this matter so much to you?" she asked, her voice edged with vulnerability. Miguel exhaled, his gaze steady. Because it's not just about the charity. It's about you. Seeing you thrive. Knowing I could play a part in that, it matters more than I expected. Anna's breath caught at his words, the rawness in his tone cutting through her defenses. But before she could respond, a voice called her name from down the hall. The moment shattered, leaving her with more questions than answers. That night, Anna sat by her window staring at the city lights. Her heart was a storm of conflicting emotions. Gratitude, frustration, curiosity, and something deeper she wasn't ready to name. She thought about Miguel's words, his unwavering belief in her potential. And for the first time, she wondered if maybe, just maybe, she was capable of more than she had allowed herself to believe. Miguel, too, spent the night in contemplation. His carefully curated world of finance and control was unraveling, replaced by something infinitely messier and more meaningful. He didn't know where his path with Anna would lead, but he knew one thing for certain. He wasn't ready to let her go. The city thrummed quietly around them, a backdrop to the delicate dance of two lives slowly intertwining. And as the night deepened, both Anna and Miguel felt the faint stirrings of a truth they couldn't yet articulate, a truth that would soon come to light, changing everything. The air felt heavier as February gave way to March, the city caught in a liminal phase between winter's chill and spring's promise. Anna couldn't shake the feeling that she was standing at a similar threshold, her life poised on the edge of something transformative. The weight of Miguel's words lingered in her mind, their honesty unsettling but undeniable, yet she couldn't ignore the complexities of their connection or the unsettling realization of how deeply he had influenced her life without her knowledge. At the charity office, Anna found herself drawn to a stack of archival materials related to the organization's founding. She told herself it was a harmless dive into history, but deep down, she was searching for answers, clues about Miguel's involvement, about the scope of his influence. She discovered that Miguel had been one of the charity's earliest and most consistent benefactors, his name appearing on documents spanning years. His donations weren't just generous, they were foundational, ensuring the charity's survival during its most precarious moments. The revelation left Anna conflicted. On one hand, she admired his generosity and vision. On the other, she felt like a pawn in a larger game, her life intricately entangled with his without her consent. The duality of her emotions gnawed at her, pulling her in opposing directions. Meanwhile, Miguel was grappling with his own turmoil. He had tried to give Anna space, to let her navigate her feelings without interference. But the distance only deepened his yearning to bridge the gap between them. For years, his life had been defined by precision and strategy, by the cold, calculated logic of finance. Yet, with Anna, everything felt unpredictable, messy, raw, and undeniably real. One evening, Anna's search for answers took her to an unexpected place. The charity director's office. She had been delivering a report when her gaze fell on a photograph displayed prominently on the desk. It was a group shot from the charity's early days, and there, standing amidst a cluster of smiling faces, was Miguel. His presence in the photo was understated, almost as if he had tried to blend into the background, but Anna recognized him instantly. The discovery was like a key unlocking a door she hadn't realized was there. She left the office with her mind racing, the puzzle pieces of Miguel's involvement beginning to align. As she walked home that night, her emotions swirled. Gratitude for the opportunities his support had created, anger at his secrecy, and a burgeoning curiosity about the man himself. When she reached her apartment, she found Lucas waiting for her in the living room, his textbooks spread out on the table. He looked up as she entered, his face lighting up with a smile. "You're home late," he said, his voice laced with concern. "Yeah, work ran over, Anna replied, ruffling his hair affectionately. She sat down beside him, her gaze drifting to the books. Lucas's dreams of becoming an engineer were a constant reminder of why she worked so hard, why she endured the uncertainties and sacrifices of their life. "Do you think Miguel's a good person?" she asked suddenly, surprising even herself with the question. Lucas frowned, his young face thoughtful. "I don't know him, but he's helped us, hasn't he?" Anna nodded, her throat tightening. "He has. But sometimes I wonder if there's more to it, if there's something he's not telling me." Lucas shrugged, his youthful wisdom cutting through her doubt. "Maybe. But sometimes people do good things for reasons they can't explain. It doesn't mean they're bad." His words stayed with Anna long after Lucas had gone to bed. She sat by the window, the city lights flickering like distant stars, and allowed herself to consider the possibility that Miguel's actions, however complicated, were rooted in something genuine. The next day, Anna confronted Miguel. She had sent him a message the night before, asking to meet, and now they stood face to face in a quiet corner of the charity office. The space felt too small, the air too charged with unspoken words. "I found the photo," Anna said without preamble. "You've been involved with this charity for years." Miguel nodded, his expression calm but serious. "I have. It's something I believe in." "Why didn't you tell me?" Anna's voice wavered between accusation and vulnerability. "Why hide it?" "Because it wasn't about me," Miguel replied. "I didn't want you to see me as some benefactor or puppet master. I wanted you to see me for who I am." "And who are you, Miguel?" Anna's question was quiet but piercing. "Because right now I don't know if I can trust you." Miguel's jaw tightened, his gaze steady. "I'm someone who's trying to be better, to do something meaningful. Meeting you, it reminded me of what really matters. I never meant to manipulate you, Anna. I just didn't know how to approach this without making it more complicated." Anna's heart ached at his honesty, the rawness in his voice cutting through her defenses. She wanted to believe him, to accept the possibility that his actions were driven by something more than ego or control. But trust was a fragile thing, and hers had been tested too many times. "I don't know what to do with this," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Miguel took a step closer, his eyes searching hers. "Then let me prove it to you. Let me show you that this isn't about control or power. It's about you, about what you're capable of." Anna looked away, her thoughts a storm of conflicting emotions. She didn't have an answer, not yet. But as she left the office, she felt the faintest glimmer of hope, a flicker of light in the uncertainty that surrounded them. For both Anna and Miguel, the path ahead remained unclear. But one thing was certain: the choices they made in the coming days would shape not only their own lives, but the lives of those around them in ways they couldn't yet imagine. The days that followed were marked by an uneasy quiet. Anna buried herself in work, her thoughts a whirlwind of confusion and doubt. Miguel's revelations had cast her life into stark relief, leaving her unsure of what was real and what had been shaped by his unseen hand. Yet, amidst the uncertainty, she couldn't ignore the subtle thread of hope his words had planted, the idea that she was capable of more, that her life could expand beyond the relentless grind of survival. At the charity office, the buzz around their newest initiative reached a fever pitch. The mentorship program was set to launch in a week, and Anna was tasked with overseeing the final preparations. She moved through her responsibilities with focus and precision, but beneath her composed exterior, questions lingered. Miguel had offered to prove his intentions, but what would that proof look like? And more importantly, could she trust herself to believe it? Miguel, for his part, struggled with his own doubts. He had spent years navigating the cutthroat world of finance, mastering the art of reading people and predicting outcomes. But Anna was an enigma, a variable he couldn't control, a force he couldn't quantify. Her strength and resilience had drawn him in, but they also reminded him of the vast gulf between their worlds. Still, he couldn't walk away. For the first time in years, he felt connected to something real, and he was determined not to lose it. Their paths converged one rainy evening when Anna received an unexpected message from Miguel. "I have something I need to show you," it read. "Can we meet?" Anna hesitated before replying. Part of her wanted to decline, to keep her distance and protect the fragile sense of stability she had rebuilt. But another part, a quieter, more curious part, urged her to say yes. After a moment's pause, she typed, "Where?" Miguel sent her the address of a modest community center on the outskirts of the city. The location surprised her. It was far removed from the sleek, polished venues she associated with him. She arrived just as the rain began to let up, the air thick with the scent of wet pavement. Miguel was waiting for her near the entrance, his expression unusually subdued. "I'm glad you came," he said as she approached. Anna crossed her arms, her gaze steady. "What is this about?" Miguel gestured for her to follow him inside. The building was unassuming, its walls adorned with faded posters and community notices. He led her to a small meeting room where a group of teenagers sat in a circle, their faces lit with a mix of excitement and nervous energy. At the center of the group was a young man in his 20s, speaking animatedly about his experiences overcoming challenges and finding purpose through mentorship. "This is the mentorship program," Miguel said quietly. "It's what I've been working toward for years, and it's what your involvement has helped bring to life." Anna watched the scene unfold, her skepticism giving way to a reluctant admiration. The program wasn't just an abstract idea or a line item in a budget. It was real, tangible, and deeply personal. She could see it in the way the teenagers leaned in to listen, their eyes wide with hope, and in the way the mentor spoke with conviction, his words carrying the weight of lived experience. Miguel turned to her, his voice soft but resolute. "This is why I do what I do. It's not about money or control. It's about creating something that lasts, something that matters. And you've been a part of that, Anna, whether you realize it or not." Anna's throat tightened as his words sank in. She thought about the opportunities the program would provide, the lives it would touch, the futures it would shape. For years, she had struggled to find meaning in her own circumstances, to believe that her efforts could amount to something greater. Now, standing in this room, she felt a flicker of that belief take root. After the session ended, one of the teenagers approached Anna, a shy smile on her face. "Are you the one who helped start this?" she asked. Anna blinked, caught off guard. I'm just part of the team," she said modestly. "Well, thank you," the girl said earnestly. "It means a lot to have something like this. It gives us hope." Anna's chest tightened, the girl's words cutting through her doubts like a blade. For the first time in years, she felt the weight of her efforts truly acknowledged, not just by Miguel, but by the people whose lives she had unknowingly impacted. As they left the center, Anna turned to Miguel. "Why didn't you show me this sooner?" she asked, her voice tinged with a mix of frustration and gratitude. Miguel smiled faintly. "Because I wanted you to see it for yourself, to understand that this isn't about me. It's about the difference you can make." Anna didn't respond right away, her thoughts swirling. But as they stood there in the rain-drenched street, she felt a strange sense of clarity. Miguel's actions had been flawed, even misguided at times, but his intentions were undeniably genuine. And for the first time, she allowed herself to consider the possibility of trusting him, not just for what he had done, but for the belief he had in her. The city lights flickered around them, casting long shadows on the wet pavement. And as they parted ways, both Anna and Miguel felt the quiet stirrings of something they couldn't yet name. A connection that had weathered doubt and distance, now poised to grow into something far greater. The city buzzed with life as spring began to take hold, the crisp air carrying hints of renewal. Anna felt the shift, not just in the seasons, but in her own life. The past few months had been a whirlwind of revelations, doubts, and unexpected connections. And now, standing on the precipice of change, she knew there was no going back. Miguel had invited her to one final meeting, promising it would bring clarity to everything they'd been navigating. The location surprised her. A small park tucked away in a quiet corner of the city, far removed from the chaos of their usual surroundings. She arrived just as the sun was setting, its golden light casting long shadows over the sprawling greenery. Miguel was waiting by a bench near a cluster of blooming cherry trees. He stood as she approached, his expression a mix of nervousness and determination. In his hands, he held a slim folder, its contents hidden but clearly significant. "I'm glad you came," he said, his voice steady but laced with emotion. "I'm here," Anna replied simply, folding her arms. "So, what is it you wanted to show me?" Miguel gestured for her to sit, handing her the folder as he took a seat beside her. "This," he began, "is the culmination of everything I've been working toward. It's not just about the charity or the mentorship program. It's about creating something that lasts, something you've been a part of from the very beginning, even if you didn't realize it." Anna opened the folder, her breath catching as she scanned the documents inside. It was a proposal, a detailed plan for expanding the mentorship program into a citywide initiative, complete with funding allocations, outreach strategies, and a long-term vision. At the bottom of the first page was a signature, hers. "You want me to lead this?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Miguel nodded. "You're the heart of this project, Anna. Your story, your strength, it's what inspires people, and it's what makes this possible." Anna stared at the papers, her emotions swirling. For years, she had fought to stay afloat, to provide for Lucas and keep their lives stable. She had never allowed herself to dream of something bigger, something that could truly make a difference. And now, here it was, an opportunity to not only change her own life, but to impact countless others. "I don't know if I'm ready for this," she admitted, her voice trembling. "You are," Miguel said firmly. "You've been ready for longer than you think. This isn't just about what you can do for others. It's about believing in yourself, about knowing that you're capable of more than just surviving." Anna felt tears sting her eyes, her doubts warring with a flicker of hope. She thought of Lucas, of the sacrifices she had made, of the people she had met through the charity whose lives were already being transformed. For the first time, she allowed herself to imagine a future where she wasn't defined by struggle, but by purpose. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Anna closed the folder and looked at Miguel. "Why me?" she asked softly. "Why did you choose to help me?" Miguel's expression softened. "Because you reminded me of what it means to fight for something real. In my world, it's easy to lose sight of what matters, to get caught up in money and power. But you made me see what's possible when we put our hearts into something. You saved me as much as I helped you." The words hung in the air between them, their weight undeniable. For the first time, Anna saw Miguel not as a benefactor or a shadowy figure pulling strings, but as someone who had found his own redemption through her. And in that moment, she realized that she could let go of her doubts, not just about him, but about herself. As they stood to leave, Miguel reached into his pocket and handed her an envelope. "One last thing," he said, his tone light but serious. "Consider this my final investment." Anna opened the envelope to find a check, a substantial sum that could cover her debts, Lucas's education, and still leave enough to start a new chapter. Her breath caught, the gesture both overwhelming and humbling. "I don't know how to thank you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Don't thank me," Miguel replied. "Just use it to create the life you deserve. And when you're ready, let's change this city together." As Anna walked away, the weight of the envelope in her hands, she felt a sense of clarity she hadn't known in years. The doubts, the fears, the insecurities, they hadn't disappeared, but they no longer held her captive. For the first time, she felt free to dream, to hope, to believe. And as she turned back for one last look at Miguel, she saw not just the man who had quietly shaped her life, but a partner in the journey ahead, a journey filled with possibility, with purpose, and with the promise of something truly extraordinary. If this story touched you, let us know your thoughts in the comments. What would you do if someone gave you a second chance to rewrite your life? Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories that explore the power of connection, resilience, and transformation.